What up, man?
What's happening? That bookcase is growing.
What's that?
Bookshelves is growing.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen this bookshelf yet, actually. We got a new office, and when we got the new office, we got a new bookshelf. So technically, yes, it is growing from the three shelves I had floating on the wall behind me.
Is that in home or are you working out of the house now?
No, we're working. We got a an office. It's like a mile and a half away from our house. We live in a tiny village, so I can't say it's downtown, but it's on Center Street, so it's in the main area of the of the village. So it's nice. It's basically free. So it's like
Oh, that's
100
cool.
it's like $150 a month. So
Dude,
yeah,
you feel guilty like you're stealing from them?
I do. Like when so there were two options for offices. This one came up second, and we were so it's actually in a village owned building, so I had to go to a village board meeting to present my case on why I should get this office. And I also had to like pitch how much I'd be willing to pay. And I'm like, this is really weird. Like, why don't you guys just have a set rate for these offices? So I go to the village board meeting, and I sit through everything. They finally get to us like, okay, cool. Well, Mary Jo and Joel want to rent an office here. What do you guys want to pay? I'm like, I don't know. What's everybody else paying? Like, how about $150 a month? I'm like, do you want a year commitment, 2 year commitment? I'm like, no, month to month is fine. I'm like, all right, I'm in. Like,
That's
so
cool.
yeah, it's pretty awesome.
What up, Sander?
Yeah, so we'll have people coming in, uh, filing in here shortly. Sander, glad you could make it, man. I know you were late for the last one.
Calling you out. Jeez.
No, I meant that in a good way. I meant like I'm happy you're able to make it to this one. So, uh, anyway, not in a bad way. So, well, dude, I'm excited, man. I am really excited because this is something that our students, our clients, everyone needs, and so I'm going to give you kind of my intro of what I know about you, and if there's anything that's wrong, because I'm going to talk about results that I know of. I want you to then, once you take over, fill in some gaps and fill in some details of what I'm missing. But um, let's kick this training off. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you are, depending on whenever you're listening to this, if you join us live or you join us during the recording, very excited about this training. Mike here is our high ticket sales, our mini webinar sales, our high ticket courses sales expert, and I don't say that lightly. So I have worked with a handful of high ticket closers in the past. I've worked with various experts, and I can't. Mike was actually on my podcast. He was on my Sold 11 Hours podcast maybe like a year ago. And he's a true marketer, because after the podcast, he sent me a gift for being on the podcast, which is he's the only person to send me a gift. And true as shit, I turned into a client afterwards. So, do you remember what gift you sent me, Mike?
Yeah, of course. It's ice cream for you, Dom, and the wife.
Yep. And so we made it. We used it. It was an awesome gift, and so that stuck out with me. And uh, the next time that I was in the market for some closers was when we were scaling up one of our own mini webinars. And I knew of Mike. I knew of what he did, obviously, because we had a connection. And so I called him up, and he was also working on a couple of my clients' mini webinar funnels who had been scaling very, very quickly. And so my partner, who runs ads for some of our done for you clients, said, "Hey, listen, Mike's crushing it for two of our clients right now. I know you're looking for salespeople. You should talk to him." So I did, got on the phone and hired him. And so what I hired him for was to help me find and train other salespeople, because I wanted to get off the phone. And the process was fantastic. It was a breath of fresh air, because what I had done in the past was really just pick up other closers. Like, I would basically just reach out to my network and say, "Hey, do you know how to do high ticket sales? Come work for me." and it didn't work out all that well. And so Mike learned my offer, learned how to pitch it. Then he recruited, I think it was 4 sales reps for me. I interviewed all 4, picked the top 2, and then he trained those closers on my offer. And the first day, I remember Gary had closed like 2 sales like right away, and it was great. And so what's unique about Mike is not only does he find and recruit and train salespeople, but like he also maintains them as well. So he gives them ongoing training, ongoing support, listens to your calls. And so I wanted to bring him on because, number one, Mike knows the mini webinar system, knows the high ticket courses system. And Mike, just so you know, when I say high ticket courses, I'm referring to mini webinars. I've done a rebranding. It's the same thing, just a different terminology. So he knows this system. He's had success with some of our clients. He's had success with his own funnel. He uses a version of the mini webinar funnel to recruit his own leads and his own clients. And he's been crushing it. I mean, I know you're working with Tyler. You worked with, I don't know if you're still working with Roger or what, but you're working with Roger. You worked with me. So I wanted to have you on here, talk about like how to position yourself on these calls. How to, one of the main questions that we get consistently is, how to downsell on the phone. Like how we lead with the highest end offer, and how do you take that, and how do you downsell if you're downselling your products, and then just general sales processes. So your background, your results are in the probably tens of millions at this point. I know you worked with some big coaching firms, big consulting firms that were doing hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars each month, and you took them from like, what were you doing with traffic and funnels? Like, what were the numbers with those guys? Like what you started at, and then what you ended up helping take them to?
Yeah, we went from 80 grand a month to 500 grand a month in 6 months. But I mean, yeah, this year alone, like we've got 12 people where we've added $1 million to their run rate just based off of bringing in sales reps and helping them get off the phones. And all in all, I mean, like the mini webinar system, hands down, is the best system that we've seen in terms of cost per application, qualification of the people that are coming in. There's a reason why we run it internally as well. I mean, we year to date are at a like 10.2 to 1 return on ad spend. So the system works, and it's just a matter of really making sure that you can dial in that sales process and how to maximize the people that are coming to you. So I don't know, Sander, if you have any specific questions. I did put together a training as well, but if you have specific questions, what I'd like for you to do is kind of rattle them off, and then I can make sure that we cover them through the training.
Sounds good. I will also poke in and treat this as kind of like a interview style training, and try and dive deep where I know some of the questions will be with our audience. And so, yeah, man, when actually real quick, what were some of, if you don't mind, like some of the clients that I know that you worked with, like with Roger, Tyler, Jason, like what were some of the results that, those guys had? Because I know you crushed it with Tyler. I don't really know anything about Jason. I haven't followed up with him, so I don't even know if you guys are still working together or not. But Roger, like when they started with you, like where were they? Like Tyler, I know is a big success story for you, but like what were some of those transformations?
Yeah, so Roger, when we started working together, they were really having a tough time with their closer. They dropped off pretty dramatically, and I think in December they did like 20 some odd thousand, and then our biggest month together was 96. We were just shy of the 100. And then with Tyler, Tyler started basically at flat zero. He had hired a closer. The closer didn't close anything. He had sold about 15 grand in total on his own. And then we went from just straight flat line to in August, he did 125 grand. So
nice.
Yeah, and he's just been cranking out with the system. So it's been working really, really well, and it's been fun to like keep growing, and we're adding more people to the team. So it's just a matter of the time before we hit that 200 grand month. So
awesome. Well, take it away, man. I'll shut up.
So Joel, you shot me over some kind of questions based off of a poll, and then I put together a training based off what your audience wanted. So like the core premise is just how to close high ticket courses over the phone. One of the first questions that you'd mentioned the audience would want to know more about is the specific mindset of taking calls. I know this trips up a lot of people, especially when, like, if you aren't a salesperson, and like when I first started, I'm not different than anyone here. Like, I thought that I worked in a hotel and did like front desk stuff, and I thought I thought the salespeople were like greedy, self-absorbed, arrogant, and just, all the normal connotations that we have about salespeople. I had those too. And then over time, I just realized that, like, I can't do anything if I can't sell. And I ultimately have to learn how to sell in order to be able to have the lifestyle or the impact that I wanted to have. And so over time, I've acquired the skill, and it's definitely something that's learned. It's not necessarily something that is just natural for people. My wife, she's from Venezuela, barely spoke English even. And I've taught her how to sell, and now she's a just straight up closer, where she had her own little offer, and she was closing like 70 to 80% of the people she was talking to with her broken English, which is awesome. But so the one mindset that we have that we talk a lot about is what we call the astronaut helmet. So a lot of people in the world of high ticket sales, or just in the world of, personal development in general, talk about the power of positive thinking, and that you need to like visualize the deal before you go into the call, and you need to see what's like, see them giving you a credit card and yada, yada, yada. And I'm actually a total non-believer of that. And the way that I look at every call is I go into it like it's not going to be a sale. And I'm constantly looking for all the reasons that the deal's not going to happen. And this comes from astronauts, because astronauts, the way that they prepare to go to space is they practice everything going wrong. They don't sit there and practice the perfect flight again and again and again. They practice things blowing up and then how to repair them. They practice engines shutting down and then how to land despite the engine shut down. And so the process of becoming an astronaut, they'll train for like 20 years and really only go to space 4 or 5 times sometimes. So the whole training is just knowing what can go wrong and then being prepared for when what can go wrong goes wrong, and constantly looking out for those things. And with a lot of the newer salespeople that we're training, we see that they do what's called happy ears. And so happy ears is where the buyer tells you something and you want to believe it because it's the outcome of you getting a deal. And instead, when I'm on a call, I'm constantly looking for is inconsistencies, incongruencies, potential things that are going to blow up later on in the call if I ignore them, so that we can address them as early as possible. And when you're constantly figuring out what can go wrong and you're able to take care of it in advance, then the process of closing calls is a lot easier. So this is something that the astronauts, they actually call the power of negative thinking. And when you show up and you're looking at all the things that could go wrong, you're no longer scared of them, right? Because fear is really just, in a lot of ways, being unprepared. And when you're prepared for something, it's a lot less frightening. And so by just having the repetitions, looking for what can go wrong and how to learn from it, you end up really being able to be solid when those things pop up, and you're not caught off guard, you're not off balance, but you're able to handle it. So that's one big part of the mindset. And then the other big part of the mindset is alter egos. So the reason that I have this picture of Tom Brady is this was an alter ego that I used a lot. This is Tom Brady after they won, when they were down in the fourth quarter and they had that huge comeback.
Against the Falcons.
Yep, that's it. This is the Falcons game right there. And so it was that mentality of like not letting things discourage me and just staying laser focused on like the task at hand and executing the plays properly. And alter egos are a really amazing tool because they allow you to bypass your own personal limits. And so the biggest problems that people have when they're selling is that something's happening in their personal life, and then whatever's happening in their personal life affects their energy or their mentality on the call. So say, for example, you just got hit with a big bill for medical purposes, and now you're like, oh my God, I desperately need to make the sale. So you're on the call and the energy contaminates the process. And what we want to do is isolate and protect that energy. And the most amazing thing about alter egos is you don't have to be something. You can just allow yourself to pretend like you're something. And in the act of pretending, you are able to acquire the values or the skills or the confidence or whatever it is that you're trying to espouse that this character has. And I've altered, and like I alternate through different characters. So like certain times it's like I've found that specific characters will offer specific values that I want to bring to a call. And then I just kind of allow myself to channel that person while I'm on the call. It's really bizarre, but it works amazingly because you can just bypass your own ego. And then you stop getting tripped up on how I sound or who I am, and you get to play and pretend, and then it allows you to access just a different level of yourself.
Can you elaborate on that? Can you give us an example? So you're saying you try to emulate, is it another version of yourself, or is it somebody else that you want to model?
Someone else that I want to model. So, and sometimes people can create alter egos where the alter ego of them is a new person that they create, and other times the alter ego can be someone else that they're pretending to be. And so like a really good example is Beyonce talks a lot about how she's never Beyonce when she's on stage. She's Sasha Fierce. So when she goes to a music video shoot or she has a live performance, she says that, you know, Beyonce is like everybody else. She's vulnerable, she's human, she has her own flaws, she has her own weaknesses. So when she's out on stage, she's Sasha Fierce. And Sasha Fierce is this like channeled version of the values that Beyonce wants to portray while she's out there. And then when she comes off stage, she no longer has to be that person. And so when you can create and compartmentalize parts of yourself inside of your own mind, it allows you to be protected from your inherent vulnerabilities.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah. Any follow-up questions on that?
Nope. Not from me.
Cool. Yeah. So the power of negative thinking and then channeling certain traits using alter egos are really powerful tools when it comes to making sales, because the power of negative thinking empowers you in a way where you're not scared of things going wrong. Rather, you're prepared when things go wrong, and you're actively seeking for things to go wrong. So then it doesn't like shock you, and you don't clam up, you don't tighten up. And then the alter egos protect you from other elements of life happening, which is going to be bound to happen. So that's that part. And then other thing before calls is reading into applications. So this is something that people do too much, in my opinion. They get an application and they say, oh, you know, they're only making $3,000 a month. This is not a deal, blah, 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 blah. There are certain things, certain patterns, and you might want to write these down if you're tuning in on the replay or if you're here live. The things that we see that have correlated with deals are typically going to be that they talk about you in some form or fashion, right? So they say, yeah, when you said that thing about XYZ, or, you know, I read your post, and they'll talk about some sort of content when they're coming into it. And so they show that there's this relationship and bond with you. People who do that very often are deals. Other things that we see are goals. So it's less about how much money they're making today and more about how much money they want to make, right? So if you're selling a high ticket product and potentially you're helping someone grow their business or helping them build a business, if someone wants to make $5,000 a month, the odds of them buying a high ticket product are slim to none, you know? Or if they want to make $3,000 a month, it's like, well, come on, you know, we can't really do a lot with that. But if they're at that $10,000 a month or more as a target, then investing, you know, $2,500, $3,000 starts to make sense. And so what we tend to see is that their goal income levels are more important than their current income levels. And that's counterintuitive. A lot of people see the application and say, oh, well, they only are making, $1,200 a month. I have one of the best success stories of someone I've enrolled into a program was literally making like $1,500 a month. I convinced him that he needed to get a credit card. He got the credit card. He gave us everything that he had to his name. He maxed out that credit card, gave us every dollar, and said, I hope this works out. And today he runs a 7-figure agency, has a Tesla Model S, and he's like considered one of the more respected Facebook ads buyers in the space right now.
Is that Ryan?
Yeah, it is Ryan. And so it's so much less about how much they're making and more the mentality and the desire and the drive that the person has and the ability for them to see themselves hitting their targets, right? The ability for them to see themselves, yeah, I could get 3 clients at $3K a month, or I could get 7 clients at $3K a month and make 20 grand a month. Yeah, that's doable. So it's more important to see that they have big goals. And then it's also, if they talk about you in the application, that's a good indication. But to be honest, if you were to like poke through my funnel, you'll see that I have like nothing in my application. I have maybe 2 questions and people barely answer the application, and I don't care. I still talk to everyone. And I close right now 15% of the applications that we get on the phone with. Or no, sorry, 15% of total applications. So that includes people we don't get on the phone with and don't make an offer to. So when I'm on calls, it's usually about a 33% close percentage. But yeah, so I close about 33% of calls, 15% of total applications. And I have no details. And even if they say, I only have one question, which is, are you currently making 50 grand a month? They answer yes or no. And even if they answer no, I take the call. And then I ask, are you spending at least 10K a month in ads? They answer yes or no, just as a multi-field click the bubble. Even if they say no, I still take the call. So like running away from calls or being scared because the application says something is just silly. Like the more opportunities that you get on the phone, you never know. One of the clients that we had this year was someone that was literally making like 3 grand a month last year. I talked to them and I told them like, nah, dude, you got to go fix this, this, and this, and like go get these things straight first. He came back to us this year at the point where he was doing 70 grand a month, and we've gotten them to 150 grand a month inside of 3 or 4 months. So you just never know, like when you make these offers or when you have these conversations, the seeds that you're sowing can come back and pay you for a long, long time. Like sometimes it's the person that you turn down, but you give them good input that ends up being one of your greatest referral sources. So to be scared to get on the phone with these people is silly. Just make sure that when you're allocating your time to get on the phone, it's time that you can do sustainably. You don't want to max yourself out and like feel like you're dying or struggling or exhausted or frustrated, because if you don't do it sustainably, you're not going to consistently do it. And if you're not going to consistently do it, it's not going to pay you in the same way. Like consistency is key to running these types of systems, because I have people who will see my ad a year ago and then they'll buy today because now they're ready. And just consistently running ads is so important. And like to give you another idea, like I've been running the same ad. I haven't touched it maybe other than like up the budget a little bit here and there. I've been running the same ad for actually a year straight. So the more impressions, and like people say all kinds of negative trash on it, then other people come in and they say great stuff, and it doesn't matter. Just get on the phone with the people, talk to them. If you do this, you're gonna get the actual results, right? So, because like it's like the old Woody Allen joke that like 80% of life is just showing up.
Yep. Mike, out of curiosity, what can you explain your offer right now? So like when you get on the phone, like how many different tiers you have? You know, is it multi-tier? Like give me an update on what your offer is.
Yeah, so with our offer, we pretty much have 2 offers. There's a back-end offer as well, but we like just kind of see.
Yeah, I'm talking just the front end. Yep.
The 2 front ends we have is, so the first one is we introduce 4 proven 7-figure salespeople in 7 days for your money back. Price point is $3K, and then it comes with a total satisfaction 30-day guarantee. That offer is gangbusters. It works amazingly. And then if people aren't quite ready for that, so usually like I want someone to be at about 20 to 25 grand a month minimum before we consider taking them on for that, and then them have paid media. There are times we'll make exceptions, and it's if we know that their system's set up properly, or if we know that someone like really sharp helped them build their offer. You know, like Tyler would be another example. He wasn't really making any money, but Joel, I knew you built the offer. I saw the offer. I was like, this is going to work. And so just like my spidey senses knew that the offer would run and scale, because partly how you structure the system. So there are times where we'll make exceptions, but most people, we want to see them at about 25 grand a month. And when they're below that, we have another offer, which we call Close More Clients. And in that offer, it's 90 days. People have access to daily coaching calls. We do weekly call reviews with them. So we'll listen to their calls, give them actual coaching and feedback, customized based on what they need. And then they have access to a whole suite of trainings when it comes to high ticket selling. So there's foundations, there's advanced high ticket selling, which is going to be more like conversational hypnosis, NLP, and language patterns. And then we have follow-ups and pre-call processes. So how to make sure more people show up, and then how to make sure more of the people that you talk to end up closing. As well as we have some more mindset stuff beyond just the two that we showed here. Cool. So those are the two offers. Usually if someone's at about 5 to 10K a month, then we'll offer them into Close More Clients. 5 to 20 really, but 5 to 10K is where most people will purchase that. And then if they're at the higher end, then we sell them Recruiter Rainmaker.
Nice.
So yeah. Do you guys got any questions so far? I see Sanders said, why those questions? Why not ask them if they're spending $1,000 in ads? It just helps set the mind frame, to be honest. Like the fact that $1,000 a month in ads isn't usually enough to maintain a salesperson. They need to be closer to about 5,000 minimum. But it just sets the mind frame of like kind of the caliber of people that we work with and talk to. So it creates a little bit of desire for them to want to be that caliber of person. If that makes sense. Cool. So the next part of the training, this is huge. This is probably like one of the biggest things. And this is where people get frustrated to no end, is because they try to treat everyone the same, but people are not the same. People behave differently, and you have to understand where they come from and how they communicate. And if you can cater your selling style to the person that you're selling, you'll see a dramatic difference in the results that you get. And also, if you serve one niche market, it's very often going to be that you'll have more of one communication style than another. So how the communication styles show up, they have drivers, they have expressives, they have analyticals, and they have amiables. So basically a driver is what someone would call a type A personality. They're the person who gets on your call, they try to take over your call, they try to make you get to the point, like, yeah, just tell me what's going on here. And they're that, like, usually they're going to be CEOs, I run a business, they want to get to the point, they want to rush things, they want to try and take control over the process. And expressive is the type of person that, like, they just want to tell you their life story. You know, and you'll get these people on the phone and they'll tell you about, you know, back in 1990, I was doing this, and then that led me to this. And you ask them just a simple, like, database question, and then they'll tell you 3 stories. Then you're like, you still didn't get your answer. So that's typically an expressive person. An amiable person is someone who is more likely just going to agree with you, and they don't like confrontation. They don't like being pressured, but so they just kind of go along with it. And it's what you would typically call like a people pleaser, is typically going to be an amiable. And then an analytical is someone who's like asks you every detail about the product, and, you know, they want to know what training program do you deliver the course in? And it's like, how is that even relevant? Like, and so they're going to want to know all the little teeny intricate details of your program. And so when you understand these 4 different people, and like people can be hybrids of them, as well, but like these are kind of the core 4 personalities, and you have to treat them each differently for them to feel comfortable. So like, for example, like before we get into how to treat them, it's really important if you can understand them. So drivers oftentimes are going to be business owners. Expressives, many of them will be salespeople. Many of them will be like in some sort of presentation or people-oriented role. Amiables, you'll see a lot of amiables are going to be like nurses, school teachers, those types of people that like public servants are oftentimes amiables. And then analyticals are going to be a lot of like engineers, accountants, software developers, right? And so you can kind of categorize people based on what their actual role is and what they do. And then, so how to communicate with these different types of people. Drivers, you have to show them the reason why you're doing something. They don't like to follow people unless they know that they're doing it for a reason. And once they're clear on the reason, and you also want to play into them like, yeah, so really fast, like this is going to be super quick. I just need to know real fast because, and so really fast, it's almost like the red flag for the bull. They're like, okay, and they go with it. Whereas an expressive person, the difficult challenge that you'll have with them is you'll want to relate with them and stay personal, but you'll need to ask questions that contain their answers. And be like, yeah, I really want to talk to you more about that, but because I want to help you, like in 2 sentences, or can you give me the exact number on this thing, or can you tell me the specific data on this, right? And so you're going to try and contain their answers by these sorts of frames, like in 2 sentences, specifically, can you tell me the exact? And then you want to ask really hard, closed questions with a specific answer so that they can't tell you stories. Amiables, they're going to just agree, and you have to call it out, right? And normally you're going to want to do it where you're not accusing them. There's this kind of balance to it where it's like, it sounds like, maybe you don't agree with that. And then they'll be like, yeah, well, and they'll kind of contradict themselves. And then you'll be like, well, I'm not sure because I hear this and then I hear that. So like, what is it? And like, it's okay either way. And you let them know that there's no pressure, but you have to call out what the seeming incongruence is. And then they can start to be able to share their side. And if you don't do that, they'll just agree with you. And then they'll do the, like, I need to think about it thing, or the, like, it all sounds good. Can you just send me this stuff? And then I can like take a look at it and get back to you. And they'll not give you hard no's at the end of a call. Whereas a driver will be like, I don't want it. No, that looks like it doesn't work for me. And it's because of this. So yeah, thanks for your time. Bye. You see how those differences work?
Mm-hmm. Amiables. So in my opinion, amiables are I'd say I never knew how to, I never knew how to handle drivers. I remember a couple calls where they were, they were like, oh, I just want you to know, like, I'm interviewing you for this, for whatever. I'm like, okay. And I would just hang up, or I would end the call right there. Like, so it's funny because like, I've dealt with all of them. And I would say, like, I have a hard time dealing with those types of people. There are nice drivers, and then there are a-hole drivers. And I hate dealing with the a-hole drivers. I've dealt with them a couple of times. They're few and far between, but amiables are really difficult to navigate. Like, I would say that they're really difficult to navigate because like I would say, like, on the receiving end, like, you think that all the signs are great. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good. I got to think about it. It's like, oh, come on. Like, you think as the person running the call that the call is going really, really well. And then they stiff you at the end. Like, so Yeah, I think it's really important to know how to handle those types of people, because those are the most deflating. It's like, oh, the call's going great, and then
Yeah, then you're up and you're like, I don't know what happened, and then you're thinking about it forever, and you're talking to everyone about it, and it drives you nuts. Yeah.
yeah,
And what's going to happen is most people are going to be like biased to being able to sell one of these specific groups because that's kind of their predominant communication style. So they're better at selling that group. And then you'll start to expand your zone after you have enough conversations where like, okay, now I can start to sell expressives as well. Okay, now I can start to sell amiables as well. And then once you can sell to every end of the spectrum, it's pretty easy to know who they are quickly. And then you know kind of what you got to do with each one. Like a driver, you can't use pressure that much because they don't respond well to pressure because it feels like that you're knocking them out of control. And they want to feel like they're in control. So you have to give them the illusion of control. Whereas an amiable, they need the pressure. They need someone to crank it up a little bit because left to their own devices, they'll just kind of be like, they'll glad hand things and not really end up doing it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a really big distinction once you can categorize these different things, and then it makes it a lot easier to know, okay, I'm dealing with this personality type. And then eventually you'll get to the point where you know, like, hey, I'm really good at selling this personality type, not so good at selling this personality type. So then it becomes a game of play and challenge of like, okay, how do I, like, what can I try on this call to sell an analytical? Or what can I try on this call to sell an expressive? Like for me, I was really good at selling amiables and expressives in the beginning when I first started selling, and drivers and analyticals would just dominate the crap out of me. Like the drivers would take control, and then it'd become this like two rams just smashing their heads against each other type of thing. And then the analyticals, they would just ask me so many questions about like the tangible tactical stuff. Like, you know, what type of screws do you use on this product is like the type of weird questions that they ask. And you just like, I would get very frustrated, but after a while you'll start to develop the ability to sell them as well.
Cool.
You guys have any questions so far? Sander, John?
I think Sander is. Did you raise your hand, Sander? Okay, cool. You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, even better. Thank you. The question is, do you have like any scripts, more or less like some of the questions that would help you, get better results with each one of these different types of people?
Yeah, good question. That actually kind of rolls right into the next segment, which is like, what's the best framework or script? So the thing that people look for when they're starting to sell, and this is a big mistake, is they look for a script, right? And a script is basically an if this, then that situation, right? If X happens, then do Y. But humans are not so simple. Humans and human interaction and social interaction is more of a complex system than a linear system, right? And so if you try to apply a linear system process to it, you're just going to feel like an asshole, right? Because people are going to get mad at you, and then they're not going to respond the way that you want, and it will work occasionally. And so it's better, rather than having hard and fast scripts, to have a framework, because a framework gives you wiggle room to operate within. And so ultimately, what we're looking for is how to stay in dialogue. And dialogue has to happen based off of an organic conversation growing. But there's a pattern to the conversation. And once we can break down the pattern, especially with the mini webinar system, because they're inbound leads, so the pattern stays the same. Once we break down that pattern, it's really easy to understand kind of what you got to do for each segment. And so this pattern is what we call the Hollywood sales method. And it's what we teach at Coaching Sales. It's basically the starting point that we take all sales reps and business owners through when we're teaching them how to sell their offers. And it's all just based on Hollywood screenwriting, right? And so in terms of films, the way that it works is it's a 3-act play. If you look at all Shakespeare, it's just 3-act plays. right? Shakespeare is considered one of the greatest of all time as a playwright, and it's all the same process every single time he writes a play. So you have Act 1, you have Act 2, and you have Act 3. And so Act 2 is going to be your setup, right? Set the stage. Act 2 is going to be the confrontations. So this is where the crisis starts to happen. And then this is the climax and resolution, right? And so this framework, how it actually relates to a sales call is probably where you're wondering. And so Act 1 is discovering the desire, right? And so this is where after we immediately set the agenda, right? Like, hey, I'm going to ask you a little bit about what you got going on. And I'm curious to learn about like what you want to accomplish, where you're at right now, what's stopping you from being where you want to go. Then from there, I can tell you if I can help you. And if I can't help you, I'll point you in the right direction and we can just figure out our next steps. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Now you're going to go right into this discovering the desire phase, you know, and every offer is a little bit different. Every market's a little bit different. So, Sandra, who do you serve? If you want to just type it in the chat box too, you can do that. But if you tell me who you serve and what you offer them, I can give you example questions that you would likely want to use on most of your calls.
Cool. I'll send it in. I'll send it in the chat. It looks like you might have stepped away.
Okay, cool. But yeah, basically inside of Discover the Desire, we want to know where they're at right now, right? So the basic assessment of where they're at. We want to know where they want to be. And then we want to know what's causing that gap, what they have tried before, and why they don't want to just do it on their own, right? And so, for example, real estate agents. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to ask them, how long have you been a real estate agent? How many years? What brokerage are you working at? Is that the brokerage you started with? Oh, no. What made you change brokerages? Okay. And then what specific target market do you serve? Do you focus on getting listings? Do you focus on getting sellers? Do you focus on getting buyers? Or do you focus on working with investment real estate or real estate investors? Like, who's your target market as an agent? Do you focus on luxury houses? Do you focus on middle income houses? Do you focus on like affordable or low end houses? Who do you focus on? What are your marketing tactics that you're doing right now? So have you tried direct mail? Are you getting leads from Zillow? How much are you paying per lead from Zillow? How many leads a month are you getting from Zillow? How many deals do you get from those leads? Okay, how many deals per month do you close in total? What was your gross commission income last year? What's your gross commission income on pace for this year? Where do you want your gross commission income to be? Right? So this is all to discover the desire. You want to understand this, and the better you can ask the questions as they relate to the specifics early on, right? So if you notice, all the questions that I ask are facts. I'm not asking them, how do you feel about your gross commission income? I'm asking you for the facts. Because when you talk about the facts, the feelings emerge, right? So if someone's got, so let's say they got a lot of debt and you ask them, you know, what's your debt look like right now? They'll tell you the facts, but they'll feel the emotions. So in Discover the Desire, there's two things that are going to happen. People want to move away from a pain and they want to move towards a desire. Certain people are more biased towards moving towards things. Other people are more biased towards moving away from things. Depends on the personality that we're talking about. So if you remember, our other people, like drivers, tend to move towards a little bit more. Amiables tend to move away a little bit more. So it depends on who we're talking to, the desire that we're going to look at, and the desire that we're going to emphasize. And so when we can get the specifics of all the things and we collect all these data points, then that's when we want to know, you know, what's stopping you from getting to where you are on your own. I see. Okay. And then now you're going to take it a level deeper, which is usually there's going to be some things you'll notice where, and this is like, if you guys use this tool on your calls, you'll be amazed at how this works. It's so stupid sounding. Like, I didn't believe it would work when I first heard this, and then I use it and it works amazingly. So let's say they say something and it sounds like they're leaving out an important detail, or they're answering you in a general way. So let's say someone says like, yeah, well, I'm just not doing enough deals because, it's really important that I do more deals. I gotta get more deals done because, otherwise it's just not working out. It's just not working out. You just mirror what they say. You literally say the exact same thing with a rising intonation. It's just not working out. Well, yeah, the thing is that like right now I've been doing this for 6 months and now I haven't even hardly made any money and I don't know what to do. And, my wife told me I better do something different or else it's not going to come together. And like, oh, okay. So your wife's putting a little pressure on you. Yeah. It's just like, it's really showing up at home and it's not working out the way that I wanted it to. And that little thing, it's called a mirror. So you say what they said when you want to know for them to go deeper in it. And then with a rising intonation, they won't even perceive it. And then they'll spill the beans. And then that way you don't have to ask, what exactly is not working out? Now they're going to feel resistance. But if you just say, it's just not working out, well, yeah, and they have to explain and justify themselves. And then they feel heard at the end of it, and then they're ready to move on, right? So from there, at the end of the Discover the Desire, normally we're going to ask them, why not just do what you're doing right now? Why not stay where you are right now? And then what's your timeline for moving forward? Great. Okay, I got it. Then that's where we transition into Act 2. Act 2 is where you're building the belief. So this is all about presenting your offer. And when you're presenting your offer, the mistake that people make is they tell everybody all the details of the offer. They don't need to know the how, they need to know the what, right? So you show them the what, not the how. Typically the what is going to be 3 to 5 key points that they need to understand. And if you really want to get good at presenting your offer, go handwrite copywriting bullets, right? The XYZ thing that gives you this and this without any of the blah, blah, blah. If you just hand copy some of those, it will help you present your solutions, right? So for example, Sander, you're talking to real estate agents. Let's say we're generating leads for them is the offer. Well, typically we're going to look at the 3 different things that they want. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to narrow down who you're actually talking to, right? And we don't want everybody, because if you try to attract everybody, then your advertising doesn't work, right? So it's the same thing as basically walking around town with a megaphone in downtown, or just calling up someone who like is receptive to your offer. Now we did something there, which is the metaphors. So how you tell the what without telling the how is using metaphors. So each pillar of your offer, you want to create metaphors that connect with the person. So for example, with our offer, I tell our clients all the time, hey, first we got to get the right salesperson. And what we tell, like, it's kind of a principle of ours, is it's a lot easier. Like, you can train a chicken to climb a tree, but it's a lot easier to hire a squirrel. And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Okay, I get it. Like, yeah. And that metaphor resonates. So if we use metaphors, it makes the brain feel like it got the how without really getting the how. And so you'll want to use metaphors for each pillar. So like another metaphor that I designed for a client was, he was talking about, he had this attraction system, right? And it was like a matter of finding the right audience. And he was telling them like, yeah, well, if you go into LinkedIn groups, the thing is that like there are certain groups where your targeted audiences, and if you put the message out, then it works really great. And all people are going to do is come up with a bunch of objections to that. So they're going to say, oh, but I don't really want to be in LinkedIn. Oh, I don't really use LinkedIn. Oh, but LinkedIn is, I don't know about LinkedIn. We want to basically tell them the same thing without telling them all that. And how that works is we came up with a metaphor where it was like, okay, have you ever seen an ice cream man at a baseball park on a Saturday morning when the kids' little league's been playing? That's what we got to do. We got to show up at the right place at the right time with the right offer. right? And so what we do initially is we design the system to make sure that we know where your audience is, right? So kids after a little league game, we know what your offer is, and then we show up at that right time. And if we do that, then people will go gangbusters. And if you've ever seen one of those ice cream trucks there's usually a line out front and the kids are begging their parents to take them there. So now we said all the stuff of what they're getting, but with visual and emotional tied into the whole idea as opposed to the tactical. If you get lost in the tactics, they'll come up with objections. If you stay in this metaphor world of visual, emotional, and you tie it to your idea, then they'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I get what you're talking about. So that's typically how you're going to build the belief. And we want to look at each pillar of your offer, each of the potential questions or objections. And you should, after you take, let's say, 50 calls to 100 calls, you'll know the patterns of questions people will ask you. Well, how much money do I need to have for ad spend? That's probably going to be a question if you're running advertising for people. Oh, but you know, I don't know if I really I'm not very good at technology. Okay, so now we need to know how to answer these things with sort of like analogies or metaphors without directly going head to head against those. Does that make sense?
Metaphors are crucial. We use them in all of our marketing and all of our mini webinars, and yeah, there's power in metaphors.
Yeah, it's crazy because it especially with a good metaphor, it's visual and emotional.
How many do you have in your back pocket, Mike? Like when you hop on the sales call, like it's got to be a core handful that you use over and over again.
Yeah, there is, but I can invent them really fast now. But what I tell most people who are starting out, because it's not necessarily how they're thinking, is pick usually 2 to 3 categories of metaphors. And so maybe you really love sports. If you love sports, coming up with sports metaphors is going to be really easy for you, right? Maybe you really like cars. Everybody understands cars, and so a car metaphor works great. Or tools as a metaphor work great. So like some places that I often look at for metaphors are going to be like gardening. I don't know why, but people just understand gardening and growing plants and animals, right? Or like growing things. So that's a really good land of metaphors. Sports, I love sports metaphors. So you'll find that if you narrow the domain of metaphors to like 2 to 3, you can come up with an unlimited idea of metaphors. Where people get stuck, they're usually thinking about metaphors from all these different domains, and then they can't come up with anything.
So there's this book that I bought a while ago because of how important metaphors are. It's called Metaphors We Live By. And there's another one that I was trying to find. This one isn't the best. It kind of explains, this goes into like the deep psychology of why metaphors work so well. But there was another one, I think it's called Metaphors Be With You, like a play on the Star Wars book, or on Star Wars. Anyway, I was trying to find that one in my library, but
I have both of those books.
Yeah, this kind of goes deeper into like breaking it down into like a scientific process, but the other one is like a list of just tons and tons of different metaphors.
Yeah, metaphors are amazing, and once you start using metaphors and analogies, people will just understand what you're talking about without you having to go into the details. So
here we go. So it's this one. It's a big, thick one called Metaphors Be With You by Dr. Marty Groth. So anyway, there's some resources for you all.
Yeah, those are super good books, both of them. And you'll find like little things. And then what will happen is as you're having calls and objections and you're just going through the process, and then maybe you're reading or you're listening to things or you're watching something on Netflix, like the metaphors will start to jump out at you. And then you'll be like, oh my gosh, I got to take that. And then I'll use that in my call and let's try it and see how it works. And then, you'll just start to highlight things and find different ways. If you look at books in your market as well, oftentimes, let's say someone serves the same market you serve, they've probably come up with a metaphor. And so if you find the top selling books that speak to your audience, you'll find a slew of great metaphors that you can apply to your offer or to your presentation. And they're also oftentimes metaphors that the person's already heard, so that they feel like it really hits home.
Yep.
So things like working in the business instead of on the business. You know, people have heard that time and time again. You know, it's kind of like the difference between being the guy who owns the sports team or the GM of the sports team. Right now you're the GM, but we want to get you to the place where you're the owner of the sports team and you're up in the box looking down at the whole operation and you can think strategically. See, people are going to feel that. They're going to see that. They're going to be in the box looking down on everything. They're going to be able to say, okay, cool. I get it. I'm with you. You get it. I get it. That's it. And so the equation is desire times belief equals conviction. If you can create the desire, you create the belief, those two things are multiplicative, and then they give them that sense of conviction. And so once the belief is built up through the answering of the doubts and through the main pillars, using metaphors, using analogies, and then like slight little details, but not much. That point, they'll feel like, okay, I'm confident in how you're doing it. And then we can go into overcoming the resistance. So once someone has conviction, there's still going to be doubt, right? There's still, and it's just going to be emotions, right? You could say, I want to go skydiving. You know you want to go skydiving. You have looked at the data. You know that, you know, the odds of something going wrong in skydiving are really low. So you've planned it all out. You've thought about it for months. You get there, you get in the plane, you get up, and then once they get you to the edge, you're like, oh God, what am I doing? And that fear, that like doubt, that a nervous excitement is going to kick in and get at an all-time high. And you almost have no choice. You got to throw yourself off. And it's that same thing. Like, I remember when I went bungee jumping once, I was like so excited. I get there, and then I walked up at the edge and I looked over the bridge and I was like 150 feet up. And I'm like, what did I just agree to? And like, I was like, you got no choice. I got to go. And that feeling in your stomach, that's the feeling that people have when they make a high ticket investment. And so it's important that you label that. You got to let them know that, hey, I mean, you feel like a little nervous excitement right now, like you're about to go speak on stage. Yeah. Okay. That's normal. It's like most of our clients, if you weren't feeling that, I'd be a little bit concerned because it would mean that you're probably not taking it seriously enough. But if you have that nervous excitement, like the butterflies, like you're about to go out on and perform something in front of an audience, or you're about to go play a championship game, or go bungee jumping or skydiving, that little bit of adrenaline, that's a good thing, right? So they need to know that what they're feeling is normal. Otherwise, they'll interpret it as they shouldn't do it. And you can't let them interpret it. You have to label it and then interpret it for them. Then they can say, okay, I get it. Like, I know the feeling. And last time I did something crazy like this, it all worked out. So, you know, like, have you ever quit your job without having a backup plan, but you just knew it was the right thing that you had to do? And you had that, like, you're walking into your boss's office and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I about to do? See how we're giving them situations in their life that they'll know and they'll understand and that they can relate to this moment. And if you can do that, then they'll be like, all right, yeah, no, it's funny because I remember that. I feel exactly the same way. All right, you know what? Like, let's do it. And then that's a point of decision. And then from there, what you want to do, when you get payment info, normally people will tell you to ask them, like, oh, hey, okay, so what's the credit card? And what's the da-da-da? Don't ask them any questions. Tell them what to do. If you ever look at a sales letter, like written out copy, you'll notice that once the sales argument is concluded, they get to the point where they tell you, so here's the process for making a purchase. Cut this thing out, write this in, put this in a letter, address it to XYZ, and then fill out your address on this thing, and then we'll send you a copy of this. So it's the same thing. You need to tell them what they can do in order to move forward and give them the process, right? So yeah, from here, what we'll do, you can just read off your payment info whenever you're ready, and then we'll get you set up. From there, you'll get an email. And then inside that email is going to be all the next steps. And once you get those next steps, there's going to be some homework, right? So take that homework. It should take you about an hour or 2 hours. Get that back to us. Then we'll schedule our kickoff call, right? So that's pretty much it from here. You can go ahead and read off the payment info whenever you're ready, right? So we're using what's called an indirect suggestion. You can do this, not, okay, give me your payment info. That's a direct command. People feel resistance to direct commands. We're going to give them an indirect suggestion. You can, or when you're ready, you can just read off the payment info. So the process from here, so normally what we'll do is we'll collect payment information. See how I'm telling them what to do without giving them a direct command and without asking them if they want to do that or if they're in agreement. And then when you do that, they comply. But if you ask them, okay, so what credit card do you want to use? Then they're going to think about the credit cards, and then they're going to go into a different place in their mind where you're going to trigger doubt. And they could be like, well, actually, can I just get back to you on that? Or like, I got to take a look, and then they'll wiggle off the hook at the very end. Does that make sense? You guys have any questions on that part?
So I'll jump in. Kind of goes towards the end of Act 2 that you were talking about. Like a lot of what you were talking of what you were teaching with getting them to be visual, getting them to see, see and feel, like that's all marketing. Like that's the blend of marketing and sales. Like we want to do that throughout all of the stuff. Like in my mini webinar, the metaphor that I use is the way that Tesla launched, right? So I use that idea of like how they launched with their highest ticket offer first, and then they scaled down. And as soon as they see somebody else doing it, especially Elon Musk, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Why would I start with my low ticket first? Right. And like, that's like the big pillar that I get people to understand. And like, as you start to think about this stuff, like I didn't just come up with that. Like my brain was always looking for, like, I didn't even know when I was going to be looking for it, but you have to have your marketing goggles on 24/7 because you'd have no idea when your inspiration is going to come, whether it's stuff that you can use on a sales call, whether it's stuff that you can use on a marketing material. I remember I was scrolling through Facebook and somebody had shared that post. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, holy shit, holy crap. That's like, this is exactly what I do. And so I started telling that story, using that metaphor, using that image. And that's when the big pillars started to fall for me. So like, absolutely everything that Mike is talking about, like you have to have your eyes open all the time and figure out when you can capture those metaphors and use them in all of your sales and marketing conversations. Cause that's what people get. That's what people like grasp onto. That's what they will remember. They remember those moments. They don't necessarily remember the stories. They remember the moment. Oh, yeah. I remember you're the guy they talked about the Tesla launch plan, right? Yep. Now he or she knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. And with the sales training, a lot of times we use a golf metaphor, like learning how to swing a golf club as a metaphor, and people just get it. They get it. And so when you guys keep your eyes out for that stuff, you'll find, like, if you feel like what Joel was just talking about, where it's like, oh my God, like you get so excited and you feel a wave of inspiration hit you, it's very likely that you found a good metaphor or you found a good idea to incorporate into what you're doing. So keep an eye out for all that stuff, because it will hit you like a wave and you'll feel like, whoa, and your eyes will be open, and then you'll test it on a call and you'll see that, okay, it worked with this person. Let's try it again. Oh my gosh, it worked with that person too. Wait, this thing works. And then all right, I got a repeatable pitch that you can start to use. And once you get really good, like after you've had, let's say 200 to 500 conversations, you're going to just have the same pitch almost every call. The only differences are going to be like the little details about the dialogue based on kind of where they're from, how the family that they have, their values, things like that. But like presenting the offer and everything will be pretty consistently the same. Cool. So last thing I wanted to touch on was, because you guys do things a little bit different than some people with the way that you guys have the multiple tier offer structure. This is really important. And so what people do is they tell people what's in every single offer. I'm just going to tell you flat out, don't do that. Don't tell them about everything, because you're going to create indecision. And there's this concept called the paradox of choice. If you've ever stood inside of the cereal aisle of a grocery store and you looked at all the cereals and your mind goes numb and you're like, I don't even know what I want. That's the paradox of choice happening. And like one of my favorite examples is if you've ever been to a New York delicatessen and you've actually looked at a real authentic New York deli's menu, your brain just goes numb. Like they have chicken tikka masala, and then they have chicken parmesan, and then they have Reubens, and you're like, I don't even know what to get anymore. Like I'm totally lost. Whereas if you go to Chipotle, it's like beef, chicken, pork. Okay, white rice, brown rice, black beans, pinto beans. Everything's a choice of 2 or 3. And the maximum choice that they give you is like 4. But what happens is when you narrow down the choice options, the easier it is for someone to make a decision. So if you know early on into the conversation, like, yeah, well, we have a done for you offer. I don't think that's really something that you'd be ready for yet. What I imagine and what I would say based off of your situation is going to be best is we can help you out, get this thing up and running. And then if you want to hand it off once you get it up and running, we can move into the done for you if that's cool. But for now, let's just focus on this one. Right? And then you present your done with you offer. And so the thing is, like, think of it like almost like a camera lens. You can focus on a focal point. You have different options based on the distance or based on what you're trying to capture. And so when you know the person that you're talking to, you're going to know kind of what option that they're ready for. And what you want to do is make all the other ones irrelevant, and then you only focus on what's relevant to them. Right? So someone who's just getting off the ground and maybe they told you earlier in the conversation, I've only got like $2,000 to invest, and I know I need to do something, but it's difficult. Don't talk about your 12K package. You're just going to shut them down emotionally, and they're going to feel like, I can't afford this, and what the heck am I even doing here? Right? Be like, hey, we have way bigger stuff, but for you and where you're at, like, I think we just got to get you off the ground, right? Because you've been doing this on your own for so long, and like what we don't want you to do is try it again on your own, and then you waste money on ads or you waste money on something that's unnecessary. And so if we can get you the right foundations, first of all, you can get results real quick without a huge investment. And so basically that offer, it's $2K, and then you describe the actual mechanics of the delivery.
I'm going to jump in here real quick because I want to also add to this part. We have to remember that, like, when we set up our offers, when we structure our offers, it's all tied to one core promise. Like, no matter what you are selling, which level you are selling, it's all tied to the one core promise. When you present your offer, you're just presenting the vehicle that makes the most sense for them to achieve that promise. Okay. One of the cool things that we can do when we structure our 3 tiers is, like when I downsell, what we do, because in our mini webinars, right, in our power offers, we're marketing to the top tier, right? So in their mind, they're brought in because they're being promoted to from the top tier. They want done for you. They want one-on-one, whatever that most intimate level is. So like in their mind, that's kind of like they're framed for that. So you always want to have that as like your anchor point, because in their mind, like that's aspirational to them. They want to get there at some point. Keep using that, keeping that in mind. What I've found to be effective is always acknowledging that exists and letting them know, like, it doesn't sound like you're ready for that just yet. So what you want to do is you want to make a deal for them. Like, you want to sound like you're making them a deal. And here's how I do it. I'll say, like, listen, obviously we've got our top tier package, we've got our partnership package or our done for you package. Doesn't sound like you're in the best position for that. But I have something that's, equally as valuable for you, if not more valuable for your current situation. And what I'll do is I will explain to them, like, what I want you to do is I want you to take my templates and go through all the information that I can give you. Like basically, it's done for you without me actually doing it for you. All of my templates, all my scripts, etc. And I want you to go get this up and running and get this live. Right? It's going to be a far less expensive cost, but once you're ready for us to kind of take over, what we will do is like you can upgrade into any of the upper level services, and we'll credit this first investment towards whatever that next tier is. So almost like you're giving it to them as a gift and say, when you're ready, like once you're hitting 10K or 15 or 20 grand a month, whatever it is, and you're ready to take it to the next level, awesome. Then like basically we'll give you not a free upgrade, but we'll credit this first investment towards the higher tier. So it makes it a lot easier for you to comprehend. That makes it, that's very valuable in their mind, because it's now you're on the same team as them. And you're saying, listen, like I want to help you, and I want to help you take the baby steps to get there, versus me just trying to shove a high ticket package down their throat. And so taking the stance of like, I want you to succeed, and this is the best way that I can tell for you, like based on your situation. I don't want you to be in over your head and overextend yourself right now, because you're still going to need to invest money in ads, and it just doesn't seem like it's the right fit. So what I want you to do is I want you to take my templates. You can get up and running within 3 to 5 days. If you take action, get this up and launched, start making some sales. And then when you're ready to really blow it up, come back to us and we can talk about, upgrading into the next tier, and I'll credit everything that you've already purchased. So does that make sense? Like how you're like taking the stance of being on their team and working them up to that top tier, because that's what they're framed on. So I always reference that top tier and how they can get to that top tier by linking them together.
And also to point out like the inverse of that, let's say I'm talking to Joel, and Joel's in a situation where he doesn't have the time to go through a course on his own, nor does he even have the inclination. He'd just rather pay someone to do it for him. You can also do the inverse of it, where you say, you know what, like we have a course, but based on our conversation, it doesn't seem like you really have the time, or that's the type of thing. It seems more like you want someone just to do it for you. And like, correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's what I've picked up from our conversation so far. And like, oh yeah, that's totally it. Okay, so we do have a done for you option, and how that works is, and so what's going to happen is both ways that we've done it. If you notice, Joel said, we have this, but I don't think you're ready for it. And I said, we have this, but I don't think this is right for you. Basically what you're doing is you're building this trust that you understand what they need, and that you are able to take on more of that, like as corny as it is to say, you're taking on that trusted advisor role, right? And when you say, hey, I know that this thing exists, but it's not for you because I get you based on our conversation so far. And what it looks like you really need is going to be this. Then they're going to be more apt to follow your lead, because they feel like, he's been listening, she's been listening. Yeah. He understands my needs, she understands my needs, and that is what I really want. So yeah, let's figure out price and terms now.
Does that make sense, everyone? Just Sanders got it.
Cool. That is really it. That's all I got for you guys. Obviously, there's a lot more to this stuff, but I think we already went a little bit over the time we allotted. But I hope you guys got a lot out of it, and I'm happy to stick around too for more questions if you have more questions, and potentially help you guys with some of those metaphors, or help you guys with maybe unique things that your market does while we got a few minutes.
I got one question for you, Mike. So I have struggled personally with not pissing people, with pissing people off when I reject them. So if I find that they're not a good fit, or I just don't want to work with them, telling them no is really hard. Like, and they get pissed. Like, it's happened to me many, many times. And it's got to be something that I'm doing. Like, because when I tell them, I'm coming at a place of sincerity, because like they're ready to buy, and I'm like, no, like you can't. How do you turn somebody down politely without like completely pissing them off? Like when you tell somebody no, when I tell somebody no, it really makes them mad. do I just have to kind of accept that, or is there a better way to do it than I am? Because I've made some people made some people mad, really mad.
There's definitely some better ways. Let's see. What are reasons why you normally turn someone down and they get angry?
All right. So the one that's coming to my mind, this guy, like, he had money to invest, but he wanted to sell a very low ticket product, like 30 or $40. And it just, like, his business model didn't make sense. And I was on the phone with him and I gave him advice. And I told him, like, listen, we got to turn this into a high ticket offer. And like, it just wasn't a market that I was comfortable with. Like, I think it was like affiliate marketing or MLM or something. And it was very low ticket. And he kind of bought into the idea of selling high ticket, but like, it wasn't like, just the situation wasn't anything that I wanted to deal with. And so by the end of the call, I told him, hey man, I just based on what you're telling me, this doesn't really seem like a good fit. And he got like royally pissed. Like, I think he kind of assumed that I'd be making him an offer, but he thought that I was discriminating against him. He goes, I feel like you're judging me. I feel like you're discriminating against me. And I'm like, well, I am not judging you. I'm not discriminating, but like, you give me information and you're not, like, this isn't a good fit. I don't want to take your money. And he's like, well, I've got money. I'm like, it's not the money. Like, we had a legitimate argument about this. And he goes, I feel like you're judging me. Like, I don't have money or something. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, even if you had the money, like, I wouldn't take it because I just wouldn't feel comfortable or confident in this project being successful. And he just couldn't hear that. And so that's the one that comes to the top of my mind. But like, I've had that happen like multiple times. So. Yeah.
Okay. So a big part of it's the language that you're choosing. So if people say, I don't think it's a good fit, people feel like that's actually a personal rejection, right?
And that's exactly how it sounded when he got back to me. Like, that's exactly what I would interpret. Yeah.
Yep. You're rejecting him as a person and he can't tolerate that. And we don't want to do that. And so typically the best way to do it is to have some sort of outside criteria that we can point to and say, hey, because your market is this, like, it's not really something that we do. So I'm sorry, I can't help out. Like, I just know that like our system works, but we haven't been able to prove it in that realm. And, I don't want you to come in and like have a bad experience and me tell you it's going to work and it doesn't, so I'd rather say, I'm sorry, I can't help, than us get to that point. And most people will be cool because it's an outside criteria. That's the reason for it. Not like, hey, it's not a good fit. And then they feel like that's a personal rejection. So like, one thing that we do is I don't work with love offers too often.
Mm-hmm.
Like, very, very rarely do I work with in spiritual offers, like, just not a thing that I do. I found that they're very difficult to convert. And usually when people are buying them, they're buying the founder, they're not buying the offer. And so they don't translate well to bringing in sales teams. So I'll tell them that. I'll just say, I'm like, hey, like, we don't work on this. Like, our main kind of like bread and butter is going to be someone who's like selling money at a discount, right? So if you pay them $2K, they can help you grow your business to, $10K. And so that's kind of more what we do. We don't really, like, we've had a lot of challenges in the love offer space. So you can talk to so-and-so, maybe they're going to be a better fit for it, or they take that type of thing on. But, I would just can't say like it's not really in our wheelhouse. And then they'll feel cool with that because it's like, okay, this is a criteria and it's not me as a human that you're rejecting.
I think where I screwed up is I let the conversation go too long, meaning like that came out early and I kind of knew the entire time it wasn't going to be a good fit, but I was trying to help him and provide him value anyway. And so maybe he misread that situation as like, oh, I can help him, but I don't want to. So.
Yeah. And here's another way to do it too. So one of the ways where people will get upset is when you've asked them all the questions in the like discovery and, act one, you've gone through that. And then you get to the end of act one and you say, hey, it's not a good fit. And they feel like, what the heck? Like, you haven't even told me anything about you. And this has been a totally one-sided discussion. And I've just been here answering your questions. And now you're going to tell me no. and sometimes they'll feel upset like there's an imbalance in the interaction. And so the easy way to handle that is just be like, hey, so based on this outside criteria, it's not something that we really do, but I do have some thoughts I'm happy to share with you and at least like talk about what you got going on based on what we see and answer any questions you got. But, I would say like working together probably is not going to happen, but I'm happy to just like, while we're here, finish the chat. And
Cool.
So that way you allow them to feel like there's some balance in the interaction and then they don't totally shut down.
Awesome.
So Sander had a question here. He said, do you recommend using discounts, scarcity, or deadlines as a method to close deal? They work, but just don't be a douchebag is the best thing I can tell you. Like the thing, if you tell someone that there's a deadline or there's a discount, honor that deadline or the discount. If you tell them there's a deadline or a discount and then they come back with some excuse and then you don't honor it, that makes you a liar, right? So just preserve your integrity. And if you say something, follow through on it. And don't say it just to get the deal. Say it because that's how the process actually works is the biggest thing. And deadlines and scarcity, that's okay as long as they're real. Discounts are okay as long as they're real. Like if you look at any big events, they always pre-sell tickets. They have early bird tickets at a discount with a deadline because it works. But you have to hold your deadlines or your scarcity or your discounts and keep them real. If you don't do that, then you just start basically selling timeshares at that point. So that's one part of it. The other thing is that it depends on your market. Higher end markets don't really respond as well to discounts or scarcity deadlines. Lower end markets respond better to it. So I know, Sander, you're working with real estate agents. So let's say if you have a starter real estate agent, the discounts and scarcity will probably actually work better. But if you have a more advanced real estate agent who's been in the game for a long time, like the scarcity and deadlines won't work. And I would just present them the flat offer at whatever your price is. So that's one part of it, like who you're talking to is a factor in it. And the other thing is that like you can find other ways to create real urgency. Like it doesn't have to rely on these tactics. They do work, but you can find the deadline based on when they have a project that they want to get done or when they want to accomplish something or based on some goal that they've created. And so you can anchor deadlines to their internal calendar, not just to yours.
Yep. You could also do it based on availability too. So for us, when we take on agency clients, we do intake calls only on Mondays, right? We do that for primarily just for like blocking our calendar so we know exactly what we're working on. But if I just had a sales call before this call for our agency, and he's like, okay, cool. Well, this all sounds good. When can we get started? I'm like, all right, well, we can get started on Monday. We have availability on Monday. That's when we do intake calls. So if we get rocking and rolling and we enroll and you submit your intake form, anytime before Monday, we can schedule it for Monday and we can get started. But if it's after Monday, then we'll just have to wait till the next following week. So that's real and legitimate. I actually had one client, I lost a deal because somebody thought that I was trying to BS him with that line. And then he ended up coming back 2 months later and signing up. And I asked him, what happened? He goes, well, I thought you were trying to use some slimy sales tactic with that. And I said, no, it's legitimate. If you sign up again now, like it's going to be Monday when we have our intake call. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Bottom line is you got to just make sure it feels right for you coming out of your mouth. And, but I don't usually ever do deadlines or discounts or scarcity.
Yeah, me neither. But it's also, I think, Joel, both of us tend to sell towards higher end markets. So, like we're doing a weight loss market where it's more consumer market and it's a little bit more emotional sale than a deadline or scarcity might actually help in that. So that's something I'd consider.
Yep. Awesome. Looks like Sander might have another question that he's typing in. Katie, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Cool.
Okay, so what about following up on the ones that they say, I want to think about it? If they say, I want to think about it, they're not sold. Nobody who's sold says, I want to think about it. People who are sold will say, I need to talk to my partner, I need to talk to my spouse. Like, that can be actually a real logistical concern, and they need to look at something like that. Or, you know, I need to talk to my accountant or my CFO, or I need to take a look at my financial statements. Like, those can be real at times. I'm not saying they always are real, but they can be real. But I need to think about it is never real. That just means that you didn't sell the person. And it's going to be like the way that the human body works. So if you understand how the body works, if you have neck pain, it's usually a matter of your thoracic mobility. So this middle joint here, it's actually a interesting ball joint in the middle of your body. And if this thing's tight and the mobility is bad, you're going to experience the pain here. Or like if you have knee pain, it's usually a matter of ankle mobility, right? And your ankle's tight and locked up, and you're going to experience the pain in your knee. So the I need to think about it is something that you're experiencing the symptom, but the actual root cause of the problem occurred earlier in your call. And it's either one of two things. Either they don't have enough desire for whatever it is, or that you didn't create the belief and they don't feel like what you're offering matches their needs. And so usually they're trying to tell you no without saying no, because that's what most people do. You know, they just want to be polite. They want to save face. They don't want to get into any sort of like disagreement. And so I need to think about it has been working for probably over a millennia at this point. I don't even know. And so it's just like a human conditioned response. And yeah, if you hear I need to think about it, you know it's not a deal. And one thing as well, like this is something that we teach a lot with our sales reps and with our clients is understanding how to hear certainty and uncertainty. Because like most people don't understand, like, what's the first language you learn? It's not English. It's the language of the face, and body language are the first languages that we naturally understand. And then tonality is the second language, right? So babies, before they can utter a word, are able to laugh, cry. They're able to smile. They're able to show you goofy faces or confused faces to express themselves prior to them ever being able to use words to do it, you know? And so the human body just has certain ways of communicating things, and it's better to tune into that than it is to tune into the actual words. Like when we get older, we listen to the words a lot, and that's why we get mixed signals, right? Like a girl tells you you're so nice, and yeah, like I'll think about going out with you on a Friday night, but then doesn't text you back or show up. It's that mixed signal. The words are saying one thing, but the body is saying another thing. We want to listen to the body more than we listen to the words. And certainty sounds sharp. It's a staccato. So if you ever play music, when someone's certain, they're going to talk with a point. Like if you ever listen to Tony Robbins talk, every single word so pointed and it's real quick. But people who are uncertain, if you've ever heard someone that doesn't know what to do with their life, all the words are long and there's a tone to it. And so, you know, I mean, everything sounds good. I just wanted to take a chance to think about it for a bit. And whereas, no, I mean, everything sounds good. I need to just talk to my spouse really quick. I can get back to you. Like, how's your schedule looking? Can I get back to you tomorrow, this same time? Does that work for you? That's certainty. The other one, I think I need to talk to my spouse about it. Uncertainty. Same words, totally different communication. And so when you can pick up those patterns, you'll know when you're being lied to, or what we call them smoke screens, versus when you're actually dealing with real logistics, which logistics are like, hey, I got to talk to my partner. Can't make a decision right here. Like I owe it to them the least the respect to be able to talk to them, and then I'll come back to you with a final answer in a day. So yeah, being able to hear that is critical, and you'll start to train your ear for it.
Love it.
One last thing. whenever you're doing all these closing calls, is strictly on the phone, or are you using Zoom to do a presentation, or do whiteboarding, or it's just strictly just audio?
So there's this funny story where, like, when I was in like an early sales job, they got this TV screen that showed all these cool things, and they wanted you to use it for the presentation. And this one sales manager who's like really experienced, he goes, "Oh my goodness, that thing there, we're gonna close all of these tours." And he was just being like totally facetious because it didn't make a difference, right? Like at the end of the day, the numbers just pan out the same. And for more or less what I see is like phone, Zoom, some demo pitch deck, like almost none of them make a difference. The only time that I do see Zoom helps is if they know you in advance. So if there's already an emotional connection and then you get on Zoom and then you have that conversation, Zoom will help you a little bit. But without an emotional connection, people don't really care, and you can just sell as well with a voice or with a pitch deck or with anything. And for me, simplicity is better, so I normally go full audio if I don't know the person, and then like no demo, no pitch deck, no nothing. It's just they need to just go on that journey. You got to take them on that 3-act play, and they got to feel that desire, and then once they feel that, they got to believe that you have a solution, and then we got to start to handle those concerns, and then they'll move forward.
Awesome. Dude, that was great. That was fantastic. When I learned, the first time I learned high ticket sales, I learned through a script, and I couldn't do it. Like I'm a very analytical brain, and I thought that was going to be the way that I needed to learn. I remember I got that script and it was like 15 pages long or 7 pages long or whatever. It's like, okay, you got to ask these questions, and until they answer all these questions, then you move on to the next step and the next step. And after I ditched that and I just started, like, I still have not really followed a true process, which is not what I advise, which is why I brought you on, is because I'm not the sales pro. But once I started being real and just like started genuinely being concerned for my clients or my prospects, like, that's what sells, especially if you are just getting to know them. And you're like, okay, cool. Tell me what, set the stage, listen to what they really want, and just try and help them get what they want through your offer, if you can actually help them. And if you can repeat that to them, like, okay, like at the end, like I found this to be very, very helpful. Like based on what you told me, like, okay, I just want to recap this. Like you told me you wanted to launch this program because you're building a big brand, and this is going to be the jumping off point, right? You like the idea of leading with high ticket first and then scaling down with products second, right? If that's really what you want, I know, like, I can smash it out of the park for you. Like this is 100% home run. I say that all the time. Like when I'm confident, I tell them this is a home run. This is a slam dunk, because that's kind of like the metaphor too. They want to know you have confidence. And people will actually ask me too. My call before this call, he was like, I want to know, like, do you really have confidence in my product, in my offer, that it'll work? And I said, dude, I think it's a slam dunk. I think it's a home run. I mean, there's always risk, but I wouldn't take it on if I didn't think that this market was viable. And I'll tell them yes or no. And obviously, no, I won't take on the client, but they want to hear it from you too. Like you can say everything in the world, but like until they hear the words like, this is a slam dunk, this is a home run, they need to hear the confidence coming from you. Like, I feel like that's one of the biggest trigger points that they need to have, is belief that you can help them. And until you repeat it back to them, like, it's going to be hard to close that deal and seal that deal. So anyway, I just wanted to leave with that parting thought.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a blast.
Yeah.
And jamming with you. And Katie and Sandra, I hope you guys got a lot out of this. And anyone else who's catching this on the replay, I hope you get a lot out of this. And if you made it to the end, good on you. I mean, you're actually going through the process and sticking through things. And so, yeah, I appreciate being here.
So where can people connect with you, Mike? Where can people follow you, learn more about your offers, your services, the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, so best place is going to be find me on Facebook, Mike Mark. We have a Facebook group. You could go to coachingsales.com/group, and it will take you to there. Our business is called Coaching Sales, so coachingsales.com. And pretty much what we specialize in is this, for course creators, coaches, agencies, that sort of sales process, primarily using paid media, like what Joel's got going on with the mini webinar system and the power offers. Being able to tie all that stuff together, it just works like magic. And once you get off the phones, it's crazy how fast things can grow when you put dedicated salespeople in and you start to wear the CEO hat. And don't do it too early. You want to be able to sell your core product. You want to be able to really define the process and get clear on it all. But once you're at that point and you're consistently converting at least 25% on your offers, then when you bring in a salesperson, it can easily jump an extra 75 to 100 grand a month. So.
Awesome. Great, dude. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Thanks for sharing your expertise, and make sure to just connect with Mike at the very least, join his group and follow what he's doing, because he'll drop more sales knowledge, and you'll get a lot out of what he's talking about. So, appreciate it, Mike. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Sander. Thanks everybody else for listening on the replay, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.
Bye.